Hey, welcome back to another episode of the NY Patriot. Today I'm having another the Oddman from the Oddcast, or the Oddman out from the Oddcast. I'm having him back on again. Today we're going to have him talk about, he did some research, on something that unfortunately I knew a lot more about in the past, and as you get older you just forget shit. And I guess since I got into practicing things myself, sometimes you just kind of forget about studying other things. But he's going to cover a little bit about Michael Aquino and the Temple of Set, which I think is really that's a huge topic to cover. I think there's a lot of important stuff in there that can be learned, and I think should open people's eyes to more of, in my opinion, psyops being done against the public through people in the military and magic. So here we go. We got my boy over here, and he's going to discuss Michael Aquino and the Temple of Set.
Hey, man, thanks for having me on. I think this is a really interesting subject, and
for sure.
We were talking earlier. It's people talk about it, but I haven't heard anyone cover it in detail, and maybe they have. But I just thought, that it, especially in this time when we hear so much about pedophilia and these pedophile rings and different things like that, and the link that the possible link that he had to that, but not just that, the guy was. Honestly, I got to say, he was a pretty complex, unique character.
Oh, for sure. For sure. He wasn't a dumb guy at all either.
No, not at all. Yeah. And I just thought, why don't I kind of delve into his writings? And I was able to find this book that was written by one of his mistresses. Her name was, I believe, Linda Osborne Blood. She wrote a book called The New Satanists, and she kind of gives the whole background of how she met him, fell in love, had an affair for like a year and a half, and joined the Temple of Set, and kind of some of the things that she's seen. And then after they split up, and one of the reasons they split up is he had an affinity. A lot of people probably heard this, but he had an affinity for Nazi memorabilia. And he would like to go over to Germany and do different rituals and different things like that. And I think that kind of freaked her out. And she said there was kind of a bit of a white supremacist flavor to the temple, although, of course, they deny it. And, of course, they would. But, if their leader was kind of into those kind of things, and I can see how they would be somewhat influenced by that too. But it was kind of interesting how he was serving in the military during Vietnam. When the story goes, he went to see Rosemary's Babies in San Francisco, I believe, at a theater, and so Anton LaVey and some of his acolytes were there watching the movie, and they were all dressed in black with the robes and, looking wild. And Aquino was like, I got to check this out, So he introduced himself to LaVey, and they began a friendship. And lo and behold, Aquino ended up working in the administration for the Church of Satan for over 10 years, I believe, or right at 10 years. And he kind of looked at LaVey as a father figure. I mean, he admired him, but he really believed that LaVey was kind of like, Satan's spokesperson here on earth. And
yeah, I've heard that. Yeah.
But after, the thing is, and there's no doubt LaVey was an intelligent guy too, and he was very knowledgeable about.
I think he was
magic.
very good at marketing it too.
Yes, absolutely.
Definitely, by far, was very good at that.
Yeah, he was. He had this affinity for B horror films too, so he kind of injected that into the whole thing too. What seems kind of hokey now, but I'm sure it caught on like wildfire back then.
Oh, that was that's like wrestling back in the day. Like it's still cheesy and stupid today now, but it was like it was like a B movie type of style shit. You know what I'm saying? And it sold. It sold.
Yeah. It started pulling in, movie stars and different personalities. But over the years, Aquino, he was way more. He was a deep thinker, And of course, LaVey was the star, and anybody who gets that much attention is going to let it go to their heads a little bit. So LaVey started noticing that, Aquino started noticing that LaVey's kind of like letting things kind of slip a little bit. And LaVey kind of got to where he didn't want to really do his thing at the church, except in front of what he called the elect, which was like his, choice of a group of people. And so the rest of the church started getting upset about that after a while. And he changed the way he let people work in the degrees to come up into the church. And people were upset about that. And Aquino really disagreed with those things. And he kind of disagreed with that whole vaudeville kind of vibe too. He wanted it to be even more dark and more serious. And so,
what's funny? I don't want to interrupt you too, but
no.
Thinking about like some of the people that I knew from the OTO that pretty much had like, I guess the same reasons why they were kind of tired or annoyed with that order. They seem to have, a lot of them all went to the Temple of Set also, because they considered that a lot more of like no frills and no fluff.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know much about it because I never got into it myself, but they seemed, from the people that I knew that are actually in it, it seemed to be very much more like really based on actually doing magic and studying and learning than like, very theatrical and whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And Aquino talks about that. I'm reading, but I just started this book. It's actually Aquino's book. It's called The Temple of Set. I think there's a volume 2, but I just started reading 1. And he talks about that in the intro of that book for sure. And that was his, he really wanted it to be a serious thing, and he wanted to work on the degrees and really make it to where, people would respect it in some ways, and it would have an intellectual bent to it.
Well, I'm sure that when he started it, didn't he take LaVey's daughter and her husband left and went over to Set also, right?
Yeah, I believe so. I haven't got that far into it.
Yeah. You can even see them. I think, I don't know if it was Geraldo or Sarah, Jesse Raphael, whatever her name is. One of those shows from back in the day, they actually had them on. And I think they talked about like going to the Temple of Set because they thought, I could be wrong, I almost thought that his daughter said that she considered like the Temple of Satan as like very dramatic atheism. And that she left to go to the Temple of Set because she felt that was actually more of like real practicing magic and making stuff happen.
Yeah, that sounds right, because I know that she had a falling out with her father, and I know she did leave the church for sure. So that sounds right. And I thought, what was her boyfriend's name?
I forgot his name. He was like in the werewolf order of the Temple of Satan or some shit. And he had like the shit with his eyebrows that like Aquino had, I think, or some shit with his hair. I don't know.
Yeah, the werewolf order. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Like
that. Yeah. Oh, I wonder what those, I know I read a couple of years ago an article about her, and she's kind of still around. I think she's got a band or something, but I don't think it mentioned
she's like a Buddhist now.
Oh, is she?
Well, I looked, this is probably maybe 3-4 years ago, the last time I looked into them. They were both not involved in either of that stuff anymore. And they were still together, but I think like, she was more into like either some kind of like Buddhist, like something almost the complete opposite of where she was.
That's the way it goes, right? With kids.
Yeah. That's so funny.
Oh, man. Oh, yeah. Well, Aquino, he started getting kind of disenchanted with the whole thing, and he tried to talk with. He was close with Anton LaVey's wife too, but they kind of became introverts, and they didn't really want to hang out, and really they didn't like the spotlight. I guess it's kind of like a rock star, once you made the money and you got all the girls and the drugs and all the good stuff, then it's kind of like, well, this is boring. I just want to go be a recluse, So it sounded to me like kind of the way LaVey kind of changed his life over. But so Aquino's like, you know what? I'm going to, since I believe that LaVey is kind of dropping the ball, I'm going to go straight to the source, which is Satan, and he made it like kind of a choice to try to contact Satan and try to kind of figure out what his next step was and how he could change things or whatever. And one of the interesting things I think too, him being in the military, is that he talks about doing all these rituals at the base. I think it was at Fort MacArthur. And
where's
he
that
talks
one
about
located at? Do you know offhand?
Aquino?
You know that base, yeah, that base you were talking about.
I believe that's in California, if I'm not mistaken. I'm sure it says it in here, but I can't remember for sure.
No, I myself have been noticing. It seems like there's just certain states that seem to be a little bit more active with this stuff than the normal.
Yeah, you're right, for sure. And one of the things that surprised me, as he was talking about his military experience, in this other book that he wrote called Mind War. He wrote a series of books like Mind War, Find Far, and Mind Star. But I've got the Mind War book, which is really, really interesting if people want to check it out. It's really, honestly, and he wrote this book for the military. He joined one of their PSYOP divisions, and he and another guy were coming up with ways to strategize, with the military and help the military. And I'm just going to go over a few of his accolades, because he was very up there in the military as far as he had a lot of sway. He had won a lot of awards and different things like that.
He also got Satanism, I think, recognized, right?
Yeah, he did, and I think that helped him out when some of those allegations came along later on, and about the pedophilia and different things like that. Because he had, I think, honestly, he talks in here about how he had quite a few military members that he had worked with. They had joined the Temple of Set as well. But it says here in the back of this book, this Mind War book, it says, after commencing his military career as cadet colonel of the Santa Barbara High School Junior ROTC in 1964, which kind of cracks me up because remember those ROTC guys, and while they were probably some of the best kids, they were so nerdy. But it says, but it says Michael Aquino was commissioned in the regular Army as senior ROTC distinguished military graduate of the University of California in '68. And after a year with the 117th Cavalry and 82nd Airborne Division, he completed the PSYOP officer course at the John F. Kennedy Special Warfare School, in which he, among select students, cross-trained with the Concurrent Special Forces Officer Corps. And then goes on to say in 69 and 70, he was assigned to the 6th PSYOP Battalion, 4th Group, Vietnam. And so that's that's right in the time when he joined the Church of Satan. It says, as an HA command and control team leader, he was responsible for both tactical teams and combat operations, and audio-visual teams and civil operations, and revolutionary support in a program called CORDS, and flew PSYOP air support missions throughout the 3rd Corps Tactical Zone with both the U.S. Air Force and the Army Aviation. And that's just one section. This is another page and a half of the things that he accomplished while he was in the military. So it's...
Yo, that's...
I don't want to bore...
That's actually freaky, though, that knowing that somebody who's into that stuff has accomplished all this within our military.
Absolutely, man. He had security clearance when those charges were brought up on him later on. He never really seemed to retire, or at least he was in it for a very long time, helping out in some way, even if it was just with research. So pretty interesting that he was that deep into it.
And that's now that would be like the second well-known person that, you had Jack Parsons, who was in the OTO and was highly tied to doing stuff with the military.
That's right.
And then you got this guy too. Yeah, how many more of them is there that we just don't even know who their names are?
That's true. Yeah. And I looked on this website called Left Hand Path Sorcery, and they say that Michael Aquino was the Temple of Set founder, Grand Master Emeritus of the Order of the Trapezoid, the Temple of Set. And in 1975, Aquino was given an infernal mandate by the Prince of Darkness, which resulted in the founding of the Temple of Set and the reconsecration of the Setian priesthood. Magus of the word Xeper, Xeper, and and that's from Left Hand Past Sorcery. So, he was pretty revered in occult circles for sure too, just like the military.
Yeah. And now I think the difference also with the Church of Satan and the Temple of Set, they actually believe in a specific deity of Set in the Temple of Set, where I don't think in the Church of Satan, it's more of like an archetype that I think they kind of look up to.
Yeah, and that's funny because that was one of Michael's problems with the Church of Satan too, because he says in one of those books that LaVey was never real straight on how he wanted the church to think about Satan, whether he was a real entity or spiritual entity or just an idea. So he wanted to really make it real. And so he started, studying things about Set and, wanted to make him, because he believed he was the first Satan, basically. So,
yeah, I know on, again, if I could, maybe if you can find it, or if I'll send it to you, if I can find it again. I don't remember whose talk show it was on, but they were very much like believing that when they went to the Temple of Set, that whatever they were dealing with, that they were actually like contacting something real. They 100% believed it. They even said that then their belief was that Set created itself too, that it was there from the beginning of the creation of the world, and that Set was able to create itself out of its own thought, or something like that deep.
That's amazing. Yeah, I'm sure it says that in that book. That I'll get it a little bit farther in, but
then that's also some attributes of Thoth or Tahuti, or or Toth, however people know of him. He was supposed to be there to see the universe be made, but he wasn't the one making it. So it even has like a little bit of like his type of character in there. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, let's see. One of the quotes here from Aquino from his book, he's talking about this book that he found in 75. He said he got it from Asmodeus Grotto, or he got it from a guy named Robert Ethel, who was a member of the Asmodeus Grotto, which I guess is a secret society of sorts.
Well, Asmodeus is actually a specific demon out of the Goetia.
Oh, wow. Okay. Wow. So he says he found this book, and it was Casaubon's John Dee's Actions with Spirits, a 1659 facsimile reprint. And so he says he took that book back to the artillery battery at Fort MacArthur. And it says, where I had conducted many a call to Cthulhu during my Army Reserve weekends with the infamous 306th Psychological Operations Battalion. Which, it's crazy that he was, working with the military and doing these rituals at the same time, and actually writing, policies for the military that they would follow. It's just kind of wild to me that was happening, and probably like hardly anyone realized it. But he said he bought that book. He went home, or he went back to the battery, and it says here, for the first working, I decided to pronounce the 19th key, invoking Zim, the 13th Aether. It says Cornu required twice before any response. Then the result, I recall coming under hazy circumstances to a large wooden beamed hall, which were seated a number of men around a table. I knew them to be the secret chiefs of the white tradition, of whom Aleister Crowley and others have spoken.
I was just thinking, I was like, he's talking about shit Aleister Crowley would talk about.
So he goes into that and what he's seen and everything, and he said he identified himself to them as a priest of Set, and he said that they were angry. They did not like him and what he was bringing about, I guess, and he said their robes were changing colors before him. And
that's wild.
Yeah. And he basically kind of almost makes it out to be like they kind of got into a kind of a spiritual battle there for a few minutes. And then he, kind of comes to or whatever, ends the working. And he goes and tells, like he writes it all down, and then he goes in the next day and tells one of the guys at the Church of Satan, one of the other higher up members, and they kind of discuss it. But
you know what, I find that interesting. Now, basically the way he's talking about it, I would think is that the secret chiefs that Crowley had referred to were actually good. Mm-hmm. Is that basically? And then I guess Set would have been like the bad or the opposition.
It seems like that, but he.
Because I was always questionable about if the secret chiefs that Crowley spoke about was even good in themselves. Like, I mean, it's such a kind of an out there theory, but the secret chiefs. But I've always that's interesting. I mean, maybe even I don't know. Maybe Crowley. I don't know. It's just when you think of anything that Crowley did, you always have to wonder, like, well, how fucked up is this?
Right.
You know, and if that was if there's considered the good guys, like, what the fuck?
Well, he kind of puts in there. Like I said, I just started this particular book, but that he was kind of going about it the wrong way, and he had to kind of work around, kind of tinker around with the ritual and figure out a better way to do it so they would accept him. And he wrote, which he said actually became the kind of the guidebook for the Temple of Set. He wrote something called the Book of Coming Forth by Night. And he says, like, it's kind of a revelation, but it wasn't like Aowas, with Crowley. It was like, it wasn't a spirit. He doesn't think it was a spirit that came to him. He just had that book that I was talking about a few minutes ago, and he kind of did another working and was able to come up with that book, the Book of Coming Forth by Night, all in one night, just in a few hours. He said he wrote that, and that became that was basically the beginning of the Temple of Set right there.
So it was like another channeling that, I guess, like you said, like the Book of the Law, Crowley did that in 3 days, and this guy did that in one night. See, even that's something I think I even remember reading about, and like I've totally forgot. But like I do remember somebody else started something with some kind of channeling that was done in like faster than Crowley did, which I'm assuming it's probably this, and I totally forgot about it.
Yeah, probably so.
It's
very
he says, interesting though. It's almost like you could almost be like, yo, isn't that how cults start? Like,
right.
When you really think about that, it's like, oh, well, because this person says they're a magician because they heard voices in their head tell them something, it's okay. But this pervert over here that heard voices to start some like pedo church shit is different. You know what I'm saying? It's like you're both telling us that you believe something from a voice in your head, really.
Right. Yeah, and well, he actually said, he kind of says, though, he kind of makes the differentiation. He's kind of like he wants you to know in the book. Let's see here. He says, I simply sat down and wrote it. It was not dictated to me by a materialized Egyptian god, nor did the words burn themselves into the pages like the fabled Hebrew 10 Commandments. The thoughts were comfortable ones, comprehensible to me within my pre-existing frames of reference. So it kind of wants kind of wants the reader to know, hey, I came up with this on my own,
Well, that's that's like one of the things too. Like even sometimes of like some of the experiences I've had in magic, I always have to think like, well, I can only understand things to a certain degree because that's just how I know to understand stuff. So like, how do I know like a magical experience I had if I'm trying to tell somebody about it or what I thought it meant? Could it be wrong because that's just the way I'm built to interpret it?
Yeah.
I could have actually have really had the experience. It's just I'm totally confused about what it was.
Yeah.
So some of it is just basically my opinion on it. I can't even say it's the truth because it's just an opinion because I may not know still.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what he was saying right there, I think, with that line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and kind of switching back over to Mind War, the book Mind War that he did for the military, it was like, it says in there, and this is supposed to be like a book for the military. It's strategy, psyop, all kinds of different psychological operations in here. But he says in one part of it, he says, Mind War is magic. Every mind warrior must therefore be a magician. And when I'm reading through it, it's almost like it is a book of magic, but it's very it's intellectual. Not that all books of magic aren't, but it's kind of a cross between a magical book and then a military psyop book, and it really tells you how to manipulate people.
Oh, for sure. I'm going to tell you, that's one of the things with magic. If you really put in the work, you will be able to do that, not even knowing that you can.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll let you go a little bit more. I definitely wanted to add to this, but
no, go ahead, please. Go ahead.
The whole thing with like magic, like, in my opinion, and I mean, other people will say it too that practice, if you really want to get any results, you really have to do a lot of work on yourself too, which means like learning who you are. Now, everybody's pretty much the same. We'll all have the same basic emotions that drive us. It's just that there might be different situations that will make that happen. Like, you'll have to look at yourself and be like, why do I have these fears? Why do I believe that? Like, you have to be like 100% honest with like looking at like how much of like a shitty person you can be, or you can still be manipulated, or that you're a liar. You're really going to have to look at that shit and start thinking, why do I do that? And when you really do that type of work on yourself, and it just sounds totally psychological, and like, what the fuck do you need this for magic? But I'm telling you, you need to learn this shit about yourself to do anything serious. So now you know how you tick. Everybody else ticks the same way. It's just different little things. Like, this person may not be driven by this fear, but a different fear. And then when I know that does that, I can control them. And then I know what will make them happy. So then I can control them in that way too.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's really, everybody's the fucking same. It's just, you just have to know which buttons on which person, And once you know that, you can really spin tons of bullshit around people. And you can really do some psyop shit. Because you know yourself that well, it will work on other people.
Yeah.
And that's when it comes into, like, when I talk about like doing real magic, that's even another thing. Like, not even the fact that you can change, in my belief, you can actually change the physical world around you. Dealing with some serious magic, it's just, you're going to have to, stop yourself probably from realizing like, oh, I can make people tick just by like this small little thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you could look at it. Even you go to a club or a rave, you have thousands of people out on the dance floor, or hundreds of people on the dance floor. This is how you could really look at it in a psychological way with magic. That you are just playing sounds, and you have all these people controlled by that sound. That really is in itself a magical event. You're up there and you got all these people dancing and enjoying shit that you are doing. Right now, you are controlling their emotions to the point that they are happy, they're dancing, and they're having a good time. You are helping create that right now. That's psychological.
Yeah.
As stupid and silly as that sounds, that is psychological.
No, it doesn't sound silly at all, man. In fact, in this book, and I would be interested to get your thoughts if you ever get a chance to read this book. I tried to find a PDF of it, but I couldn't find one. But he gets into sounds. He gets into vibrations, frequencies.
That's all huge. I mean, that's, in my opinion, that's why some electronic music is big. Is because it's just the right tones that hit your body, and you're like, yeah, it will make you just want to, go along with it. I think that's actually very occulted electronic music, or it has, and it may not even be on purpose. People may not even realize, but that's what I think helps, get the people moving on the dance floor. To be totally honest.
Oh yeah, for totally sure, honest. Man. I remember.
It's like uncontrollable. It's like, oh yeah, I gotta go. Yeah. I gotta, it's like, where does that come from? Because it's sounds that are hitting your brain is telling you to do this.
Yes.
That's all it really is. Yeah.
Yeah. Aquino talks about how he had several different records for the working that he was doing. And if he was at home, he had this, and he said he always used records for some reason. He liked the way they would go around and around while, playing these songs. He put the record on repeat, and it was a certain one for a certain working. But he talks about in that book also about shapes under the psyop, certain shapes and how they affect people mentally, psychologically. He talks about brainwave resonance. He's got something called thought architecture, and it's basically just the way he's kind of figured out how to manipulate people, mind control. He talks about colors, how colors affect people psychologically.
Huge. I even remember when I was younger, I worked for like a printing company, and I just dealt with like the black and white stuff. It was basically like junk mail that I was like in charge of like programming and printing out. But I was pretty close to two of the dudes that did the color stuff. And I, sometimes would like talk to them and just see what it looks like, actually doing like real shit, like, color designing and actually making stuff. And I used to be like, how the hell did you even like learn how to, all this stuff? And he would, tell me some stuff here and there. And one day I remember him mentioning that like, he didn't say why he knew. He says, I don't know why. He says, but it's like known that certain color schemes will work better with whatever you're trying to, promote or whatever. Certain colors will make somebody buy something, or certain colors will make somebody happy. That's all part of it too.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's, we never give a second thought, or the average people don't, to colors and shapes and things we see in advertising and stuff that we're subjected to every single day. We have no idea about how it's affecting us psychologically. And those people that pay attention to the details and learn these techniques, man, they are controlling our world. I mean, there's no question about it.
Yeah. What's funny? Like even like the logo that I use, or like the NY Patriot thing I put behind like my videos. Even then I was like, I wanted to have like something cool, but then I was like, because I'm into this stuff, and I was like, somebody else could be like, to try to put something on there that isn't really making a feeling or an idea, it's gonna have to be very basic. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, so I was like, absolutely. I didn't even want to make anything too cool, because like he might be like, well, this guy's talking about all this shit, but look at his logo. Like that's meant to fucking do exactly what he's talking about. So it was like hard for me to even come up with something so nobody could shit on me and say I was doing the same thing. That's why it's just like this plain fucking the New York Patriot in the background. I'm like, I don't want to come up with any cool design because I don't want to be told I'm fucking trying to do anything, because it's that fucking easy, believe it or not.
Oh yeah, for sure, man. Yeah. In fact, the, Aquino in this book, he's got this logo for, I guess it's for the PSYOP. And then PSYOP used to be called something else. I forget in here. He says that they changed the name, but it is like this black horse. It looks tribal with red eyes. It's got these two green swords, and at the end of the swords, it looks like lightning bolts. The handles have gray and gold. And then it's got this, it almost looks like a small, I don't know, like kind of like a cap on.
And you said the sword was gold and gray?
It's green. The blade is green, but the bottom is gold and gray. And he talks about in here, I didn't think about that, or I would have marked that page. He actually explains it and kind of gets into the kind of occult reasoning behind the logo, which is pretty interesting, because only somebody who was really, schooled in that kind of thing would be able to actually.
Yeah, I'm trying to picture this thing in my head right now. I wish I could just pull it up and look at it. This is really interesting. What did you said the handle was the part closest to his hand gray and going up towards the top like gold?
So the part that you grip is kind of gray,
okay.
But then.
And then what is it? You go up and then it's gold, right?
Right.
And then the blade is green. See, like that would be like the total thing of like, if you look at like the middle pillar of the fucking Kabbalah, the moon would be gray, then the sun would be gold. And then the abyss, I always say it on my show and the other show, I'm pretty sure, even though green is used for Netzach, I'm almost positive is then again used to associate the abyss. And a lot of times these weapons, these swords or whatever, are just showing you that they're piercing the abyss. That's if you use a sword, you use a spear, or whatever that thing. The guy in the war, what was that? I forgot his name. Fuck, the Poseidon, whatever that thing that he used.
Oh, the trident.
Yeah, it's all just showing like a weapon that they're using to pierce the veil. So now I could see the blade being green.
Yeah. Okay, I found it. If you want me to read it, it's kind of interesting. He says the crossed daggers, whose blades are in the branch colors of the negative green and the cerebral gray, glow from the hilt to the tip, signifying Mind War's radiant power, and the end in the lightning bolts, symbolic of Mind War's control of the electromagnetic spectrum. The chess piece Knight, I guess that's the horse, portrayed as the swirling ghost, representing the hidden yet dynamic nature of Mind War. Its image alternates between the complete existence black, and non-existence, clear, convey not only its illusionary presence, but the chess knight's ability to move and strike mysteriously. And then it says, the horse's eyes are red. He's a horse of war. The base of the chess piece is struck with Greek letters PSI, the powers of the mind, and Phi, the universal symbol of perfection, the golden ratio. Thus combined, they convey the power of the human consciousness raised to perfection. Mind War units members wear the green beret with all uniforms except the dress blue. So just something as simple, and it really is a simple logo. I think if people look up, it says
but that
here,
sounds like it. That's like every specific, everything had a specific like meaning to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's definitely very occulted, like hidden.
I think if people look up Mind War logo or Mind War branch logo, it'll probably pull that right up.
That's wild. Because the eyes would be red because of war. So for the horse, I mean, the description, even I think the electric symbols, that's very occult in itself too, I think.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. There's another, I won't read it, but there's another logo for another branch of the PSYOP unit, and he goes into the detail of that too. And
wow.
It's just like, he's such a detailed dude, and so intelligent that I can see why the military would want to, use him and why they kept him so long. He talks in there too, in several sections, about false flag operations, and he explains them. And
wow,
and this is like something he wrote. I think this book, it says it came out in 2016, but he actually wrote it, I think, in the early 90s for the military.
Now, when did he join the military again? I meant to ask you that earlier. I think it said 64, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. All right. That's interesting. Because, I know that what we did with the Gateway Project, that's pretty much showing, the CIA involved in, I think, the late 70s. With this type of stuff. So, he could have even have been involved with this type of shit before, the Gateway experience, which I thought that was even, a long time ago.
See, it says he was in, I guess he graduated high school in 64. And then he went right into he became the ROTC Distinguished Graduate of the University of California in 68. And that's when he joined the military. So he actually, I think the next year is when he met LaVey. So he was pretty much into the occult almost the entire time he was into the military. So kind of interesting there.
See, stuff like that now, I didn't click in my head that he was in the military prior to the Temple of Set. It's how do you know that itself isn't a psyop?
Yeah, that's I tell you, one of the most, all that stuff I think is interesting that we talked about, but another section, and it's only 2 pages, but he goes into what he calls atmospheric ionization, and it is weather modification, and he details in there how they ionize the weather and how they've experimented. And they can do it indoors or outdoors to control people's moods. And it's just pretty amazing that they would actually put it right out there. A lot of us have been talking about that kind of stuff for years, but
and when did this book come out?
It says 2016.
Oh, interesting.
So yeah, that's a very interesting little section there on weather control.
Yeah, but that's admitting it, though. That it's not saying much, but it's admitting it,
Right, yeah.
Not that I think anybody denied it anyway, but, that is proof.
Right.
I've believed that they can do that shit for a long time, so.
Yeah, for sure. We know that at least since World War I, they've been able to make it rain in certain areas. So, they've really perfected a lot of things by now, or I assume they have.
That's wild. To think, now if you were to I guess believe that stories of this planet or whatever we're in has repeated itself and maybe been technologically advanced and then started over again. If you could maybe buy into that, then you would almost have to think, well, if we can kind of make it rain now, who's to say they couldn't do that really good back in the day, and that's what the flood was?
Yeah.
I know that's some out there shit. It's smoke a bowl and then think of that, but it's who the fuck knows now, right?
Well, I think they were able to drop like something like 18 inches of rain in just a few hours in Vietnam. I think they called that Operation Popeye.
Holy shit!
And they
See,
were
I
able
never
to
knew
flood.
that.
Yeah, they were able to flood the Viet Cong, and it was a flat area too. So they even have
Yo,
some
that
video,
can
I
really
think.
cause damage in the right areas.
Oh
Just like 6 inches could fuck something up.
for sure.
You know?
Yeah,
Yeah. Holy shit.
yeah, and already add to if there's already standing water or already a river, man, that could really.
Yeah. Doesn't sound like a much, but 18 inches could cause people problems.
Yeah, definitely.
Wow.
Yeah, in this book that his ex-girlfriend wrote, she talks about how he was infatuated with the character Damien from the Omen movies, which I thought was kind of funny. And supposedly, Aquino has the numbers 666 tattooed somewhere on his body.
Who's behind those eyebrows of his?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's like caterpillars, and then he brings them to like little horns.
It's like you're expecting those things to start growing and grasping onto people.
Silkworm on his. Oh man! Oh fuck! That was a good laugh. Damn. So, but he supposedly has 666 on him also.
Yeah, and it says in here that when people ask him about it, he's always kind of coy. He'll never tell them where it is. So it must be, it's either hidden like under his shirt or if it even existed, Yeah. He talks in here too. I thought was kind of interesting, but I think he's kind of giving himself maybe a little too much gravitas. He says he liked to comment that he was born in 1946, precisely 9 months after a working by Crowley's California disciples to create homunculus, an artificial being created by magic, per secret instruction of Crowley's of his Order Templi Orientis. It is interesting to note that in this book, The Occult Explosion, Nat Freeland reports that a Hollywood occultist named Renate Drux told him she believed that Jack Parsons, the California OTO leader who performed the Babylon working with L. Ron Hubbard, had been working on some very strange experiments to try and create what they called homunculus, an artificial tiny man with magic powers. I guess Aquino was pretty small, so
yeah, see, that was one of those things. I even know, like the ninth degree, it goes into about like it says you're impregnating a homunculus, and I had originally took it as an actual like unborn baby. And I had said that on some of my shows. I think like it might have been like my first one or two. And I ended up taking it down for a few reasons. One, because I think I was actually wrong about that. And two, there was just certain things I was saying that I want to eventually be able to maybe come out and do lives. And I have to show myself. So there was just certain things I took down that I thought maybe I said a little bit too much. So if anybody was to ever find out who I was, you can't really say, well, oh, look at this. He said this. Well, I took it down. Like there's no proof anymore,
Right.
But there is things now, because of doing the Gateway Project, and to me, it makes more sense looking at it that a different way. The homunculus, and if you were to like Google it and look up pictures of it, you can find where it's gonna like you'll find parts where it shows like the brain split in half, and it shows like a little man like kind of on top of the brain, and it's got like a head and a leg and an arm or something, and it's considered like the little man, like you were saying, the homunculus. But it's really just the thing inside your brain that kind of like directs the flow back and forth from your left to right. Now, in the ninth degree, it talks about impregnating the homunculus with a demon. Now, I was all like raged and fucked up thinking, I mean, it's still fucked up to begin with, but like I'm sitting here thinking like this is actually like, an unborn baby that you're trying to possess with a demon. In my opinion, neither it's actually trying to bring like that, a demon or something into your actual own brain. Mm-hmm. It would be either your left or your left or your right side. I'm not sure which one it would be. I would think actually if you're trying to be crazy with it, you'd actually be putting in the right side of your brain. But in my opinion, that's actually what it is. It's kind of like bringing it could also be creating a totally different entity too, because I remember hearing this story. Some people think that Michael Aquino was actually possibly like some moonchild that Parsons created.
That is wild.
But I do think that a lot of the times with the homunculus stuff, you're actually talking about the brain. I can give you an example. I don't know if are you a Twin Peaks fan at all?
I'm not. I've never really watched it.
All
but
right. Well,
I probably need to.
There's this. It's very occultist shit. There's a part where he's always going into this weird room. They call it the Red Room or the Red Lodge, and that part, like, that's actually like very occulted part of the show. It's got the Aquarius symbol on the floor. It has a Saturn statue. You know, it's talking about crossing the abyss. Like, once you get into that Red Lodge, like, that's where you're going. There is a point, he's got that little man, that little short dude. Well, that's the homunculus. At one point, he sits down and he's talking to this guy, Dale Cooper or whoever, the investigator in the show. And, the show is just very weird. We'll just, like, go to something that just looks weird and then go back to something normal. And it did one of those things, and it's showing, like, the little man sitting there with, like, this cup of coffee in his hand, and, like, he just turns it sideways, and it just fucking spills out. Then it goes back to Dale Cooper, then it goes back to the little man. It shows him turn the same cup of coffee again, and now it's coming out like syrup. Goes back to Dale Cooper again, then it goes back to the small guy, and now he turns the cup, and nothing comes out. He's exactly showing you who he is. He's the homunculus who's in charge of the flow in between both parts of the brain. He's just showing you a fucking cup of coffee as a weird way to fucking show you who he is.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, so sometimes I wonder if the homunculus may not actually be like, the old thing of like an unborn baby or not in total form. It could be at times, but I also think sometimes it might actually be like bringing some other thing actually into your brain.
Wow. Yeah, that's great, man. See, that's why I love to talk to you, man. You know so much about these.
Thanks.
Yeah, these different symbols and different things. And it's like, I can only put so much together because I've never been on the inside. I love that.
Yeah. Well, I'm also a huge Twin Peaks fan, so I just love to be able to talk about it.
Right. Yeah, I've definitely got to watch it.
It's just so occult. It's like I could keep watching it and never totally fully understand what this guy was trying to say. It's just, it's that fucking deep.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Yes, there's so much. Of course, we could talk about that for an hour, but so much symbolism in movies and TV shows now. It's like some of these guys are really, really well versed in the occult and in hidden symbology.
You know what blew me away that I recently watched was fucking WandaVision on the Disney, of course, on Disney Plus or whatever it is.
Yeah.
With the Scarlet Witch or the Scarlet Whore, is a huge figure in occultism. That show, I was like, yo, that shit is like telling you everything. It blew me away.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it was so obvious, like with certain color schemes or things that they were, outfits that they were wearing. Like, one part, they were even showing them living in a dome, in a protective dome. And there's like, the Scarlet Whore, in my opinion, would be associated with kind of the red sphere on the tree. And at one point, basically her job was that she wanted to keep her husband, I forgot his fucking name, the comic book character that he was. Basically, she's going to feed this motherfucker a bunch of lies to think that he lives in this cozy, nice, sweet world. And there's this one character, this black chick that's a friend of hers that is wearing like a white and blue dress that is like trying to come and explain to her like shit's fucked up, what's going on, like kind of like the truth of the situation. And she gets so enraged, she just kicks her straight out of the fucking dome. Like that's exactly explaining like the situation now. Like the truth and everything just got kicked out and we're under fucking control by some, bullshit belief system.
Yeah.
And then there was just tons and tons of even with like, I think like her friend was walking around at one point with like a bowl of fruit, and I think it was like a bunch of oranges, and there was one apple in there, and whoever took the fruit only took the apple, like out of all of them. I mean, just tons and tons of like crazy occult shit in that show. I was blown away. I was like, yo, this is a fucking masterpiece, and people aren't even fucking seeing it.
Damn, I've got to put that one on the list too, man.
For real, yeah, that blew me away. With that show, as silly as it sounds, but I was just like, yo, this is like occultism, like it, especially a lot of Crowley's ideas. His explanation of the Scarlet Whore, because he was very big on like that idea, was very much aligned with what stuff he would say about her.
Dude, I watched a movie a couple weeks ago that was so dark. It actually most movies don't really bother me afterwards, but this one was a little bit disturbing. It was called The Void. I think there's I looked at,
that's a fucking creepy movie, dude.
yeah, dude, that was insane. And
I've
of course,
heard
you know, the abyss in the
yes,
end. Oh, man,
yes, I have to
was
watch that again because I think I was like digging into like occult movies and stuff, and I saw something being referenced to that movie, The Void, and I was like, yo. Just looking at the picture, like the front cover, would make me think that it is. And I was like, I know I've seen that before. It was a creepy as shit movie. I was like, I have to watch that again because I could actually see now how that was.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and then Marvel character, even Void himself. Like, I'll admit it, I play the fucking Marvel Contest of Champions on my phone. I'm not actually into comics. I just like it because it's like Street Fighter with comic book characters. I think it's pretty cool. Even that game itself has tons of occult symbolism. And if you knew the character Void and like you looked up his biography or like the explanation of that character, that's a totally occult idea. Totally.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of their characters are. I mean, in my opinion, that's what the X is for the X-Men. It's the symbol of Malkuth. That's like, you know, whatever thing you pulled from the abyss is now here in form, which would be like, you know, a superhero to anybody else.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Like, so I think like, you know, like Superman, I've heard this one guy, Gary Wayne, say that he thinks like Superman because, you know, his real name is like L or something L, which, you know, is kind of like an angel name. And
his name is L?
I think like Superman's real name, like
because L is a god name on the tree of life for Chesed. That would be the god name for that sphere or that idea would be L. E-L.
I'm sure somebody's yelling at me right now, but it's something L. I think. And I can't remember.
But that's always associated with angel names too. A lot of them end with E-L. L.
Yeah, and I think his father has the L name too, if I'm not mistaken. And so this guy Gary Wayne says that he believes the actual Superman logo is actually somewhat of a triangle upside down, you know, pointing towards Earth, and the S is actually symbolizes a snake from the snake. I don't know if that's true, but it sounds interesting.
Well, I mean, and, you know, he's got a lot of red and blue. That would be the power and the glory on the Tree of Life. You know,
wow.
So, I mean, in my opinion, that's even why cop cars have the red and blue on the top. It totally makes sense with the power and the glory. You know? Yeah.
Wow.
Which is basically on the Tree of Life, blue would be like like everything's perfect, utopia, basically. All the laws are set, everything's abiding, everything is the way it's supposed to be. Then when shit gets fucked up, and like, I guess a good way to say is like when you have to cut the cancer out, you have the red sphere, which would be like the severity or, enforcing the law. I mean, you could look at like Archangel Michael. Maybe sometimes he has to do things that suck, but it's the will of God because it's got to preserve the rest of humanity. Mm-hmm. You know, so there would be something like that idea. So you would have the red and blue, you know, the just and then fixing it, which would be Superman.
Yeah. Yeah, man, it makes total sense.
Well, or in cop cars.
Yeah, of course, the Freemasons, you know, they have the Blue Lodge. So I'm sure that blue signifies what you just said.
Yeah, something to do with that, yeah.
And actually, I read a book. It's been probably a year and a half ago, but this guy was a theosophist, C.W. Leadbeater. But the book's about Freemasonry. I guess he was a Freemason first. But he talks about the Blue Lodge, the Red Lodge, and the White Lodge. So I forget how he differentiates them, though. I'd have to go back and look, but it's pretty interesting.
Yeah. I was, I would assume when it comes to colors, like even the Blue Lodge, maybe it could just be representing like the attainment of like that sphere on the tree. You know, maybe everybody there is at least of that grade. You know, be something to that extent. Yeah,
that makes sense.
Which is high enough up there on the tree. I mean, it's past Tiferet, so anything past that, I'd start considering like serious.
Yeah. Yeah, man. It's getting back to Aquino, it's like he was able to get all these different positions in the military, and like before it was said and done, you know, he was highly decorated, and then there were these accusations, like it was I believe it was a daycare at the Presidio, which is a military base, and these kids started complaining to their mother that this man hurt them, and the mom kind of started investigating it, and if you read that book, The New Satanist, it's pretty gross as far as it goes into detail about a lot of satanic ritual abuse and different things that are that seem to have some darker occult links to them, even though a lot of times it seems like the people in charge don't want to investigate it if it has that type of link to it. But that led, when the mom started looking into it, the kids kind of came clean and told them that one of the men at the daycare had been abusing them. And that led to like 15 daycares. And
wow.
They were all, the kids from 15 different daycares came forth. And I think it says here, 2 of them were U.S. Air Force daycare centers, and one was a facility run by the Navy in Philadelphia.
Holy fuck.
So, yeah, it led to a whole bunch of stuff. And let's see here. There was one where
now, see, I would even wonder, like, you know, because it was in the military, is that why it got hushed up a lot faster, too?
Yeah,
like, was it planned like that? Like, oh, well, we know, like, if we ever do get caught here, they're not going to want to talk about this, so, you know, they'll probably cover it up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
that's really fucked up.
Well, one thing I left out about LaVey, because I mean not LaVey, but Aquino, because you know he was definitely a really strange looking dude, and I think he went out of his way to even look weirder. You know, he looked like a cross between like Dr. Spock and Dracula. But
yeah, that's good. That's good.
But like a nerdy Dr. Spock and Dracula. You know, it's like myself, he kind of had pudgy cheeks, so it did not. It wasn't a flattering look with that widow's peak. But he was a national commander of the Eagle Scouts Honor Society. So that just kind of fits along with the possible pedo links. As bad as I hate to say that, just kind of what it's kind of become, you know. But what they did was, with these kids, they said that the man that worked at the daycare center took them to a house. And so they took the 2 kids walking, because the kids explained it was close to the base. And as they walked past the houses, the kids identified Michael Aquino and his wife's house. And that's how they got implicated in all that. And that led to a bunch of other people coming forth. But you know, the military really stuck by Aquino because he'd served for so long, you know, and been a good soldier, you know, he'd done well by them, had a great record and all that stuff.
Well, you know, if you're involved in PSYOP shit, you want to like risk firing the person and running their mouths too? Like,
yeah, exactly.
I mean, like you kind of almost got both by the balls, really, with that type of shit. Unless you know, I mean, you could just fucking kill him, you know,
right?
But
right.
I mean, then that might raise questions. But it's like almost like you have both by the, you know, damn.
Yeah, and you know, it's funny because they ended up, I don't think they were able to press charges, and this lady talks about how hard it was, you know, when kids are involved, and it's hard to get kids to testify, and the parents are really shy about having putting the kids through that, and it's just such a mess. I think Aquino actually wrote a book, you know, saying that it wasn't true, and I haven't read that book obviously, but and it could be, you know, slim chance that he had nothing to do with it, but his wife's, I believe it was his wife's brother, owned a couple of other daycare centers, and I think at least one of them was implicated in it. And also, when Aquino's mother died, she left him some property, and in that property was a building that was a place that helped underprivileged children. So it was just all these connections that seemed to kind of point to, if there was something going on, you know, it would have been the perfect scenario.
That's crazy.
And
yeah, I mean, it's like, I feel like a lot of these things, these places that are into this type of shit, you know, if this stuff is true, it's like they all kind of got their own way, like their own way into like having the supply. You know, like, like, you know, with like the Shriners, when we covered them and the Jesters, it's like, well, they, you know, they have circuses, they got hospitals, you know, they do stuff out in the streets and stuff. Like, is it that far off to think that that might be the means. I mean, you get a carny that swipes a kid, and then the next day is in a totally different town with the circus. I mean, they had no connection to that person whatsoever, doesn't live there. You're never going to, like, that's, how a lot of people get away with this shit. You just have no connection and you constantly moving. Well, a circus would help do that. Specific bands that we've noticed also that were kind of linked to mirth, or certain hashtags and like things and ideas that we were finding on Twitter. We didn't even include this in our shit. It's something we might go back to. We had noticed like a lot of bands that were very obviously big into that stuff, and we had even thought like could a traveling band going from like bar to bar, have a roadie with them that just grabs a kid here and there, or somebody younger whenever they can. Now you got these people involved with daycares. It's like they all have some sort of means to do this shit, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. It's just terrifying to think about, but obviously if you were bent that way, you would want to set it up if you were working with other people of the like mind to where you would have victims, a nonstop supply of victims and a way to get away with getting them, Yeah. I mean, it's terrible, but it's, it makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, there was we have a children's hospital. All right, you can already say like it would make some sense for the Shriners Hospital to be doing certain surgeries on kids. But like when we did the Little Nas X video, I remember there was something that came up with the Estee Lauder in one of his videos. It's like for some reason they just focused on that. He used that in the video. Now some people would say, oh, it's rap video. Of course they're gonna push expensive shit to make it look fucking whatever. I don't think that. I think that was there for a specific reason. I looked it up. I started looking into it, and it has like the thing in it that's what does the magic for your skin. This night serum shit is some stuff called like a bifida fermate. It is bifida. It basically is like it grows like as a birth defect on the back of a baby's spine, and it can happen. It can pop out like that or happen right after birth. It's one of the most common actually birth defects that kids can have. It's that stuff that is in that sac ferments, and that's in there. So, like, I thought it was weird, so I included it. I'm like, well, that goes back to some weird shit with kids. I could be totally off, maybe have nothing to do with it. But then I'm also realizing the Shriners Hospital, I mean, obviously, because they do work on kids, but they do specialize in that type of treatment. So, like, I'm looking at it as, like, is there something to do with that shit that we don't know about, that people are taking it from kids? I know it's crazy as that sounds, but it's like, what is it with that stuff? And even on their site, they call it Occulta spina bifida, saying because the sac can be hidden, they call it Occulta. So it's just like, I don't know. I know it sounds a little bit out there, but it's like, people think of like adrenochrome being something that's possible. Is this another thing that we don't even fucking know? Because it's there to keep you not aging. It's to help your face look better. And it's coming from a fucking child. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's the thing is, people, look at the Shriners and they're like, oh, they do all this stuff for children.
Well, that's to have the good image.
Yeah. And they have the circus. I used to go, we have a Shriners Kerbella. It's called the Kerbella Temple here. And it's on the top of the hill, like probably the highest peak in the city. You've got the big Kerbella Temple up there, the Shriners Temple. And they used to do circuses here all the time, but, I had no clue back then, like what these guys were about. I thought they were weird, because of the clowns and the fezzes and the little go-karts and stuff. But dude, it's the perfect cover. Like a lot of times too, there's that saying, where you do something good so you can justify doing something bad,
Yes, yeah.
And it seems kind of like you guys have stumbled onto something.
There's even more stuff that we found out with the Shriners. I mean, the Philippines, it's fucking small as shit, right?
Right.
I mean, they have 460-something lodges there. Like,
jeez.
That's like, what, is there one on every fucking block? I don't think all of them are probably legit. Could be money laundering or who knows. But they expected, neither it is already, or I have like videos of them like talking about, I think back in like 2018, They said they expected within the next 5 years for that country to be the top country for all lodges and Shriners. Now, in that country, you only got to be 12 years old to get fucked.
Wow.
Could that all be with it too? Why are you all of a sudden worrying about taking it over there and making that big of a deal? And they have videos where it looks like they have goddamn fucking resorts that these people are living on. Now, if you know what the rest of the Philippines looks like, you obviously know these motherfuckers are up to something because it looks like goddamn castles that they got over there.
Jeez.
Like the amount of money that it's probably its own little fucking community, like literally a resort for these people that are members of Shriners. It looks like paradise compared to the rest of the country.
Well, people ask me about, I've done several shows on Freemasonry. And it's like, some people, get mad at me and they're like, what do you have against Masonry? And I've been pretty fair to Masonry,
it's
really.
Not all of them. It's not all of them.
Right. For sure. But it's like, I think, with the, we may have mentioned this on the last show, but it's just those, you swear those oaths to one another. And if if you're a person of power and you are of the mind that you want more power, and they're sworn to uphold each other's secrets. I mean, you could use that for good, or you could use that for really evil things.
Yes. Yeah.
And the organization, it's like, that's another thing. I mean, they're able to organize, all the way to the Philippines or anywhere else. So it's like you guys were saying in your shows. I mean, these guys were traveling to these other places and procuring underage prostitutes, and it was just crazy stuff.
I ended up coming across a old Shriner owned website that it's going to be in one of the episodes that we're dropping on the next series. It's same dude's name, same address. It's definitely owned by a dude that says he's in the Shriners, and for the least last few years he has links to stuff that he was in the Shriners. It's a porn site. Now, there's actually a few funny things on there that I found. I'll even say it now. One, going back to 2001, I think this site I was looking at. In 2001, there is a one site called the Cozy Frog. It's fucking Pepe. It's Pepe. You go to that site. Did I show you that?
No.
Because I don't know. I sent it to a few people. It has like 5 other links to it. Cozy Academy, Cozy this, Cozy that, tons of cozy artwork of the week, and it's got a frog in it. It's fucking, that was Pepe back then. It was a Mason thing. It's part of a Mason god, and Pepe's being used now as part of the PSYOP as well. I found that in my opinion, that's exactly what's going on. I mean, it's part of, like, Pepe is also the Baal. It's a frog, a cat, and a human face. All right, so in my opinion, that's exactly the aspect, that Pepe is, and people don't even realize it. And then they have a link to Little Teens on there. Total fucking, wow. Yeah. I mean, I clicked on it now. Luckily, since I was using the Wayback Machine, I'm looking at fucking over 10 years ago. Half of the pictures aren't even going to show up because they're just not even available anymore. So only like half of the site really popped up. And I could tell you just in the few seconds that I had it open, that shit was, at least half of those pictures looked like they were 14 to 16 the most. So, I mean, that's a link right there to fucking pedophilia.
Yeah.
Child pornography. Then there was the Pepe thing. Oh, fuck, what was the other one that I was going to bring up? Shit, I totally forgot. Oh, and then it even goes at one point, that site even changes to an escort service. If you use the Wayback Machine, the same site owned by a Shriner then turns into, like, I think it's called Escort Dollars. And at one point, there's a page that you can look on it where it's even looking to hire people because this business was so good back then, and even showing you what amount of money you could make after like 30 days or 6 months or 9 months. It's showing you like the amount of money you could be making if you want to become involved in this shit.
Jeez.
Yeah.
It's just the perfect cover, man. It's
fucking insane.
I mean, nobody expects those guys because, like we said, they do some good things. So it's like, yeah, they would never expect those guys in a million years.
Nope.
And I'm sure you guys will run into this. A lot of those guys are, judges and police officers and lawyers and different things like that.
Oh, yeah. So they're able to cover all their asses. They make sure everything's all right. Nobody ever gets in trouble. And if they do, it's some bullshit stuff,
Right.
I mean, we even show that in one of our episodes. Like, you know, all the judges, ex-cops, lawyers, and they all got bullshit things for trouble. Total bullshit.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say about that, I totally forgot. There was a link on that page where it said Mike in Brazil or something like that, and it was like a link on the Shriner site that took you to. None of the pictures came up because it was old site, so I couldn't even see if any of them looked like the girls that we covered in the Jesters and Shriners. But there was a whole site that was all just dedicated to Brazilian porn. And now in my show, I was showing how that they were linked to having prostitutes in Brazil, you know, using them on their boats and stuff when they went out to have their excursions or whatever they were doing. They would get prostitutes from Brazil. Now, how do we know one of these dudes wasn't just going around and snapping fucking pictures, and these are up on that site too?
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, anything's possible with that because, oh, man.
That's wild shit.
That's great stuff you guys are doing, man. It's so fantastic because that needs to be brought to the light. People need to know about that stuff. And, you know, I've had people here recently contacting me. They're like, well, you know, my uncle is a Shriner or a Freemason. Should I be concerned about him? And I'm like,
I've had people do that to me too. Yeah.
I'm like, look, you know,
well, they get mad and they're like, oh, my so-and-so is a Shriner. You know, how could you say that? I'm like, listen, I'm not saying it's all of them. Like,
yeah, exactly.
I'm sure your uncle is probably a great man and has no idea what a few of those people are doing. That's probably all it is.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I just tell them that, hey, look, my opinion is, hey, look, he may be just fine, be a great guy, but they do have these oaths that they swear to protect one another, and they have an oath, a vow of silence. So you might want to think twice about joining. Actually, I'm working on another episode about Freemasonry, and I keep finding more stuff. You know, it's kind of like a layered subject, and it's like this one Freemason monitor, and it talks about how when you take those vows, those oaths, you're taking those oaths forever. Even after you leave the lodge, you are bound by blood to those oaths. So I think that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, because, the OTO has something like that. Like, you know, once you take your first degree, if you were to leave afterwards, even though you may not be on paper, I think you're still considered a member for life. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. That's wild.
Yeah. All right. Well, we went over like an hour. And, trying to keep them short so people listen. If you have a short attention span, they want to check it out.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, that was great, man. I really, you did a great job on that. I mean, even just for like, you know, beginner stuff, I think you still blew that out of the water. Like you had some good stuff in there. You told me shit I didn't even know. So
I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, I'm gonna want to look into it more now.
It's so new to me. I don't have it. I'll have all these things in my head that I wanted to bring up, but then, you know, I'm trying to bring up like the more basic stuff. And
well, listen, if you continue on this and you have much more to bring to it, I will definitely have you back on again to cover it.
Yeah, so, absolutely, man.
We can have you back on for this because I think this was great. And you want to tell people where they can reach your stuff, find your stuff?
Yeah, man. So just check me out, _the Oddman out on Twitter and Instagram. And there's links for my link tree is in the profile, so it'll take you to the podcast. And then also you can find me at alternatecurrentradio.com. You can find the show on there. So nice. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah,
it's been great.
You killed it, bro. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right. So everybody, you know, if you liked it, please check his stuff out. He has a good show too. He's not a dumb guy. He puts work into the stuff that he puts out. And if you like this, please, you know, like, subscribe, share, pass it on. And until the next one, everybody be well. Later.